The 4th of September 2024, Culprit's description. Mo Gorman writes on my video, I think, which is a very good video and got great acclaim, on the plight of the British people under the dictator, the World Economic Forum, United Nations-led Keir Starmer, who treats everyone as tops except his own people. Hopefully Labour MPs will soon see through him and get him out of there. Get him out of there. There must be somebody else who'll do that job. But I'm not sure if they will. In fact, I think they won't. I'm quite entitled, and all I can say is I'm entitled to talk about him as much as I want. And I'm entitled to talk about our idiots here and our vicious traitors here. Roderick O'Gorman is a TD and he is one. He is one. We have a teacher, Enoch Burke, in prison tonight for calling a boy him. Eamon Cabbage Head Ryan. I'm sure they hate what I'm saying about them. They know I'm quite competent in courts and everywhere else and will do battle with them with a gusto. Now, the thing about it is, Mo Gorman, I'm not so sure about what happened in the stabbing in England, except it is a terrible tragedy. And as in all these things, those affected and those traumatised cannot say much because these matters are before the courts. But I can talk about the general policy. If you allow migration into Britain or Ireland without proper vetting, and I repeat, proper vetting. We had proper vetting in the two countries until 2004, until the EU took away our right to vet our migrants. The EU and the treaties on the foundation of the European Union had nothing to say about migrants at all. What is being done is illegal. It's illegal. The law is they must go to the first port of call. And the EU is distributing them round, and our treacherous politicians are allowing them into Britain and Ireland. Now, you must remember that in many parts of the world there are different religions, and some of them hate each other. You want to see how it plays out in the country we call Israel on both sides. Anyone that can deny there isn't violent ramifications from religions is mad. The Christian religion at one time was quite vicious. And if you want to check up Cortés in South America, you'll soon find out that that's the case. But that has passed. It has moved more to be a religion of peace now. But that can't be said for other religions. And one of them is the Islamic religion, where you get various sections of it. And there are some of them very extreme and some of them not extreme. And there are many Arab countries which are not on the face of it against or don't harbour hatred for us. And I was in Oman and I was treated great by the Omanians there. So we have to be honest and true about it, but we have to also remember that whether the guy that do or the people who do these crimes are first generation, second generation or third generation is immaterial. I am very familiar with Irish Republican violence and a bit familiar with loyalist violence in the north of Ireland, and a lot of them who commit the crimes that they did that we called terrorism and they called patriotism, a lot of them learned it at the table. They learned it from the cradle and from the table. I could name several who heard nothing in their houses, only the British and what the British done and everything else. Whereas in the normal Irish family and the Northern Unionist family, you make reference to this. This is the historical situation. We're part of that gang, they're part of that gang, and we try to get along as best we can. That's the normal, but the normal is not enough. If there's only 1 in 300 different from the normal, then that's a possible killer. What do we owe the rest of the world? Why is Ireland and Britain being the social welfare state for the operations, the medical treatment, the reception of lunatics, the reception of criminals, the people from jails. What do we owe them? Why are we letting them in? That's my point. Why should we risk our citizens? Why should we have had people murdered? We've had people convicted. So I can speak clearly about the people convicted. And I don't want to mention the names of those who lost their lives because I don't want to battle it to such a degree to cause distress to their families. But that doesn't mean we don't try to prevent it. That doesn't mean we don't try to prevent it. I was speaking to a Russian-born man, about 55 years of age, recently, and he is being watched here. He doesn't want to go home, but they're watching him and they have him on special sign-on or something. And he says he's not involved in anything, and so he'd like to stay here. But what would we do if the Russian soldiers, let's say today there are Russian soldiers firing on hospitals and buildings in the Ukraine and launching attacks on Zelensky's troops and all of that, and shooting and killing some of them. And maybe he has a girlfriend also in the forces and they get married and they decide to come to live here, or they have a falling out with the commanding officer. Maybe they murder 7 people in Ukraine, innocent people, and the Russians themselves decide to charge them with offences for doing that. And they flee to Ireland and they come in here. What is their status? Are they to be treated the same as people from Rwanda or Islamabad? What is the situation? The bottom line is there should be a case-by-case analysis of all people who come. And I repeat again, Asi Bibi, a Catholic woman who was sentenced to death in Pakistan, was refused entry into Ireland, and Theresa May said she wouldn't let her in there either because it might offend Muslims. So I'd like to hear, is it Go Morgan or something? Mo Morgan? I'd like to hear that he says I should correct what I say and withdraw it. I will not correct it. I want the migration stopped. Stopped. S-T-O-P-E-D. I want a proper, strict vetting situation put in place, and possibly the deportation of many. It's already started in Germany. The policy of this migration is a treacherous thing. And the Green Party, which are a treacherous party, are big into it here in Ireland. But unfortunately, Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil are no better. Now, I feel that if we got the Greens out, you might get some change with Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael. But a lot of harm has been done. And one thing that must be done, there must be no votes granted to anyone who came in this way forever. Nobody who comes in here should be ever allowed to vote here and influence elections, because that's what these lefties are hoping. Oh, they'll vote for us and keep us in, and that's what the American Democratic Party is doing. Have I explained myself? I know the law. You can talk about who was arrested, but you can't talk about the evidence or anything else. That's before the courts. It's what's known as sub judice. But if we didn't have a migrant problem, our rates of these crimes would be less. And we're rapidly at a situation, and it has already happened, where some action taken abroad can result in the deaths of people. What, for example, happens if the British Air Force or the British Navy goes in and attacks the Houthi rebels, which are strong pro-Palestinian Muslim rebels closely aligned to Iran? What happens if they go in and they open fire on them? Or what happens if a ship has been hijacked and they open fire and they kill 32 Houthis? What will their sympathisers in Britain do? What will the people living near the army bases do, or the Air Force bases, if they want to seek revenge? No country should compromise its defences in that way. No country should put its own citizens at risk to take the wrath for their foreign adventures. Iceland doesn't let them in. Malta doesn't let them in. And why should Britain, and why should Ireland? And the reason people say, never mind Britain, remember we have a common travel area with Britain dating back to St. Patrick. 1600 years. People from the United Kingdom are always entitled to come to Ireland with no restriction, and Irish people are entitled to go to Northern Ireland and Britain with no restriction. The showing of your passport is merely security, but you can row a boat from Ireland across to Britain and go in and have a pint in the pub, and that has been the law for 1600 years. So therefore, a breakdown in law and order, a lack of control on migrants into the United Kingdom affects Ireland and vice versa. Have I made myself clear? Come back at me now again and give your specific reasons why you don't agree. It is a dangerous thing. Remember, in many of those countries, they have no regard for law or order. There is no law and order. There's no rules. There's no rules about sexual abusing people, about the abuse of women, about the mistreating of women, about viewing women as merely chattels. In some of them, slavery is legal. Why are we mixing it with them? If you bring them in, what do you expect? And I give you the example again. What about Iran, where the West is squaring up to fight with them? What about people if they came from Iran? How do we know who they are? What about Russians? How do we know they're not spies? How can you do that? And what about the people, if we could, we'd have 1 million here from Palestine. And what are they going to think of local Jewish people who have been living here for generations? This policy is wrong. That's my point, clear and simple. Comment underneath. All I ask of you is make the comment clear and distinctive so that I know exactly what your complaint is. See you back for something else. Goodbye.